Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. We have an exclusive one-on-one interview with Premier Jason Kenney discussing the UC Leadership Review taking place on April 9th. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke to European leaders in Brussels about how much more support NATO allies can offer Ukraine in its war with Russia. And BCN's Micah Quinn has details about a unique fundraiser local bookstore is putting on in support of the people of Ukraine.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. NATO is setting up new multinational battle groups of up to 1,500 troops in Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, and Bulgaria. Officials say they will remain in place as long as necessary to deter Russia from launching an attack on any of its members. Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says the meeting with world leaders on Thursday will likely lead to more assistance for Ukraine in its fight with Russia. That includes equipment to help protect it against chemical and biological threats. Stoltenberg says NATO troops are ready should the war spill over into NATO nations.
Hundreds of thousands of NATO troops on heightened alert, roughly 100,000 US troops in Europe now, many of them in the eastern part of the alliance. And that is significantly more than before the crisis. And then around 40,000 troops on the direct NATO command. And all of this is the immediate response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau addressed the European Parliament in Brussels on Wednesday. Trudeau was in Belgium for a two-day visit during which he attended meetings of G7 and NATO leaders concerned about the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine.
They are counting on us. So let's use all the tools we have at our disposal. President Zelensky and I have been talking often about the strong ties between our countries. Canada, as mentioned, is home to the second largest Ukrainian community in the world after Russia. So we must all collectively step up to provide humanitarian aid to support families affected by this war and already start thinking about investing to rebuild Ukraine afterwards.
Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says confronting the level of irrationality in Vladimir Putin's decision-making will be key for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in Brussels.
We will continue to announce more sanctions. We will make sure also to send more weapons to Ukraine because it is the best way to put maximum pressure on Russia, but also to make sure that Ukrainians are able to defend themselves on the ground. Meanwhile, it is important that we continue to do that. Why? Because at the end of the day, diplomacy is continuing. Negotiations are happening, and it is important for Ukraine to be in a position of strength. We stand by the side of Ukrainians. This is the biggest security threat since the Second World War. There is a level of irrationality in the way President Putin is taking decisions. And in that sense, we have to be ready. We need to adapt to challenging times. And I think that also our military needs to be better equipped.
Firefighters in the Ukrainian city of Kiev say they've recorded the highest number of emergency calls since the war began following an escalation in fighting. Ukrainian government officials say since the start of the war, more than 1,100 Russian missiles have landed in Ukraine. A senior NATO official is estimating that up to 15,000 Russian soldiers have now died fighting in Ukraine.
Одночасно, коли ми приїхали на точку, то було одночасно 5 загорянь, і ви зараз чуєте, що постійно тривають обстріли.
Interim Conservative leader Candace Bergen stood up in the House of Commons condemning the coalition of the Trudeau Liberals with Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. Bergen says what's most unsettling is how Canadians know so little about this partnership.
But, Mr. Speaker, what Canadians don't know are what are the details of this agreement. We saw a press release yesterday, but no actual details. Is there a signed agreement between the Liberals and the NDP, and will they make it public? Yes or no?
And it was clear in the last election what Canadians wanted as a priority. Action on growing the economy, expanding the middle class and making sure that people can join. making sure that we have affordable childcare, that we expand healthcare services. And all of these things are at the core of what, when we came to power 6 months ago, we said we wanted to work with other parties on. Now, I know because I was there when the Conservatives were in a minority government, they didn't work with other parties. It's an unusual concept for them, but there's the opportunity that they have today to work collaboratively in Parliament to get things done. That's our objective.
Canadian Health Minister Jean-Yves Duclos announced $8.7 million in federal funding for 9 new projects. The money will go towards addressing labor shortages in the healthcare sector. The investment is intended to help skilled newcomers gain work experience and improve recognition of foreign credentials.
At Health Canada, we have also been working on helping internationally trained health professionals get their experience and expertise recognized. Health Canada, along with other federal departments, is working in lockstep with provincial and territorial governments and key health stakeholders to find ways to effectively integrate highly skilled candidates into the Canadian health sector.
Canada and the United States are working on an agreement that would compel internet service providers to hand over private data when it is deemed essential to a police investigation. Public Safety Minister Marco Mendocino and Justice Minister David Lametti are in Washington attending the first cross-border crime forum in a decade. The two ministers have also chatted with the U.S. Attorney General and the head of Homeland Security about working together against ransomware attacks and to prevent human trafficking at the border. Well, it was another beautiful, windy, spring-like day here in southwestern Alberta as we shot up into the teens once again. Jeanette Rocher is here now with an early look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, we should enjoy the warmer temperatures while we can, since rain or even maybe flurries may be on the way?
Yeah, you know, it's hard to believe that we are even using the F word this time of year, but yes, flurries could be on their way as soon as Thursday, as we'll be seeing a 60% chance of rain or snow early in the morning, and then a 30% chance of rain or snow later on in the morning. Hopefully those flurries will just pass us by. It'll just be the rain, although sometimes March can see the worst snow, hopefully not this time though. Double digits could also be on their way as early as this weekend, so I'll have those details coming up for you later on in the show.
Thanks so much, Jeanette. We have an exclusive one-on-one interview with Alberta Premier Jason Kenney coming up in the second half of our broadcast. We chat with the Premier about a number of hot-button issues, including the upcoming leadership review in Red Deer next month. Premier Kenney says he's hoping for unity and not division as the party prepares for the next year's provincial election.
Well, I think the leadership review is a critical moment, obviously, where we either decide to stay united or to descend into a deep division that I don't think we'd ever get out of. If we were to go into a leadership election right now with all of the passion and anger over COVID stuff, we would sink ourselves into a endless divisive debate about a pandemic, the worst of which we hope and believe is behind us.
Premier Kenney will also address the doctor shortage here in Alberta and why a number of pastors were arrested during the COVID-19 pandemic. That full Q&A is coming up after business news. Lethbridge West MLA Shannon Phillips has had her latest appeal against the Lethbridge Police Service denied by the Law Enforcement Review Board. Jeanette Rocher has been following the story closely and joins us now in studio. Jeanette, this is an appeal that goes way back to the diner incident here in the city?
Yeah, Hal, this is a case that goes back 5 years. Ms. Phillips filed an appeal when she was unhappy with the disciplinary decision to demote the 2 officers who spied on her in a Lethbridge diner back in April of 2017. One of the officers took surreptitious photographs of her dining and then posted them to social media. At the time, Phillips had been the province's environment minister under an NDP government, and the officers were allegedly unhappy with her decision to ban off-road vehicles in the Castle area of the southern Alberta Rocky Mountains. Sergeant Jason Carrier and Constable Keon Warrenick faced disciplinary hearings in 2020 and received demotions for the span of 2 years. But Phillips wasn't happy with that decision, arguing that the penalty was outside of presiding officer Paul Manuel's jurisdiction and that his penalty decision was unreasonable as it was reached on the basis of joint submissions by the 2 officers, that it did not provide an explanation for the withdrawal of disciplinary charges, that it failed to consider the Charter and Criminal Code, and failed to recognize her status as a cabinet minister. The board, however, dismissed the appeal, determining that Phillips did not establish that the disciplinary process was tainted. flawed, grossly inadequate, or unreasonable. I spoke with Lethbridge Police Association President Jay McMillan about the decision, and here's what he had to say.
We thought that this was done. We thought that this was concluded after the disciplinary decision in July 2020. But she made application for an appeal based on 15 points of contention. And it's nice now, as a result of the LERB hearing, to know that those 15 points of contention were essentially dismissed as being without merit. All 15, I should add. You know, among the points that were raised included the notion that the presiding officer's decision was unfair or unreasonable, that 3 different police services conducted inappropriate or inadequate investigations. I think to have those refuted by the Law Enforcement Review Board is appropriate. I think it's a bit validating, not necessarily of our officers or of any misconduct that did occur, but certainly a validation of the process and that there's some integrity in it.
We also reached out to MLA Phillips's office, but have not heard back from her prior to our broadcast. Hal?
Thank you, Jeanette. The Lethbridge Police Service and the Lethbridge and area chapter of Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Sorry, guys. Thank you, Jeanette. The Lethbridge Police Service and the Lethbridge and area chapter of Mothers Against Drunk Driving are once again joining forces. The two groups are encouraging motorists not to drink and drive when they get behind the wheel. You'll see mobile signs throughout the city where impaired drivers have been charged. Staff from MADS say there are close to 87,000 federal impaired driving charges and provincial license suspensions every year, and they're hopeful this campaign will lower those numbers.
One, this is going to make the public aware that impaired driving happens anywhere, anytime. It's going to be a little shocking when they start seeing these signs pop up in their areas and know that they're driving the kids to school or that's the route that they take to go to work. And we're also hoping that it will also encourage people to make that all-important phone call and call 911 if they suspect somebody is driving impaired.
The Lethbridge Police have charged respectively 272 last year, 293 in 2020, and over 400 in 2019. They're out there, we're catching them every month. And a program like this, we're hoping, will provide awareness for people before they make that decision, stop it before it happens, and awareness for people to call 911 if they suspect an impaired driver.
The announcement coincides with National Impaired Driving Prevention Week. The Government of Canada says the total number of police-reported drug-impaired driving incidents increased by 43% from 2019 to 2020. Lethbridge East MLA and UCP Caucus Chair Nathan Newdorf gave a shout-out to the Winston Churchill Griffins girls basketball team for winning the bronze medal at the recent Provincial 3A basketball tournament. He mentioned the team at the legislature in Edmonton.
These young women stepped up with a 13-6 record in the 3A Deep South Division. Mr. Speaker, we know that the pandemic created extremely challenging circumstances for everyone, but our students and young athletes were directly impacted with less practice time and the cancellation of games. These young women showed something I like to refer to as the Alberta spirit. I define the Alberta spirit of using our skills that we develop and learn over time, combined with the grit and passion to accomplish something great. Mr. Speaker, the Sir Winston Churchill Griffins and the coaching staff are prime examples of the Alberta spirit. They faced challenges both on and off the court, but they never wavered in their dedication to winning a championship and going to the provincials.
Yeah, congratulations again going out to the Winston Churchill Griffins girls basketball team. A local bookstore is raising funds for Ukraine as the war with Russia rages on. Analog Books here in Lethbridge is selling wooden model kits, and all of the money will go towards helping out the people of Ukraine until March 31st. As video journalist Micah Quinn explains now, a group here from our city will then ship the funds over to the war-torn country.
You pop them all out. They don't require any kind of tools. They don't require any kind of glue.
Penny Boris, the owner of Analog Books here in Lethbridge, says the bookstore has sold the U-Gears wooden model kits for over a year, and the idea for the fundraiser was a perfect fit.
We were really impressed with the instructions because they're all just pictures, but they're very well done. And their videos that go along with them are really well done to help you put them together. So you use a lot of elastics, you use a lot of toothpicks to put them together, and everything comes in the box. And then all of them have some sort of a moving part. So there might be something like this sort of a moving part, or there might be something that actually, like with the trains and the cars, the elastics allow them to actually like run along the floor. So there's all kinds of really cool tricks to them.
Analog Books reached out to the group calling themselves Lethbridge Assistance for Ukraine, and all of the money will go towards shipping costs for medication and medical supplies that will then be sent to Ukraine.
We do need some funds to cover that. Also, we will probably make a small donation to the church for letting us use their space for so many weeks and storing the stuff there. And then if there's anything that's missing that we see in the boxes that we think could be a good addition, we would just use the rest of the funds to fill whatever we need that might be missing and send it.
There's currently 200 kilograms of medical supplies and medication that the group has collected so far, and the fundraiser has brought in over $1,000 as of March 23rd. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
That's a cool-looking combine there. Now, with warmer temperatures across many parts of southern Alberta, a lot of people are embracing their spring and summer hobbies. As Nathan Ryder reports now, many golf courses in the area are finally opening up for the season.
As winter slowly gives way to spring, many golfers in southern Alberta are ready to hit the links. Many golf courses around Lethbridge have started opening to members and the public. Paradise Canyon opened last week, Henderson Lake Golf Club opened Tuesday, and the Lethbridge Country Club is expected to open by the beginning of next month. Picture Butte Golf Club had its opening day Wednesday, and according to executive professional Dean Sklerenko, excitement for golf season is in the air.
Everybody's excited, right? I mean, we have a very supportive membership group. They're ready to go anytime that the snow disappears out there. We start getting a lot of phone calls, not only our membership, but the local public as well, and across the province, in fact, since we're open much earlier than most places. So.
Many members are excited to get back to some normalcy on the golf course after COVID restrictions the last 2 years. Corey Cleaver, a player at Picture Butte, says he is looking forward to getting on the course.
Kind of nice that this year we're not really, yet paying attention to much COVID, and it's nice to be able to go out there and share a cart with the guys and have a beer and not have to worry about the whole social distancing aspect of it so far.
For courses, the main challenge in opening is getting the greens ready to go. Sklerenko says the grounds crew has been up to the challenge.
They do a fantastic job of getting the golf course up and ready. The number one focus is on our greens, of course. We do have a greens covering on there, tarping system that protects the turf from winter diseases and winter ice damage, that sort of stuff. But it's mainly the grounds crew. Once the grounds is ready to go, we can get the golf course up and going.
For Bridge City News, I'm Nathan Ryder.
Students at an elementary school here in our city are the first to get their hands on some new outdoor adventure kits created by the Helen Schuler Nature Center. As BCN's Angela Stewart explains now, the kits are meant to help support more outdoor learning among students.
This is incredibly accessible. It's always great to get to learn in a new space.
Examining living things in the grass through a magnifying glass or navigating the coordinates on a compass. These are just some of the tools included in new outdoor adventure kits now available to students at Westminster Elementary School to help them learn more about nature in a new and exciting way.
Normally when you look at a field, you would just see like grass, pine cones, leaves, but they're finding tiny things or things that they didn't think would be there.
The kits, which were created as part of the Natural Leaders Project through the Helen Schuler Nature Center, allows participants of the project, in this case a group of students from the school, to connect with an environmental education specialist to build environmental and ecological literacy over the course of a year.
So it really helps people to learn about what makes Lethbridge special and our natural environments over time.
As part of the Leaders Project, participants would normally go on field trips, but the money typically used for transportation costs was reallocated to create the adventure kits.
These kits are designed to have equipment and sort of things that support students in getting outside and learning from their schoolyard.
Although the kits allow students to learn in new creative ways, the center believes they will even help teachers.
Teaching outside is different than teaching in the four walls of a classroom. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was to be able to assist them in learning techniques to be able to teach outside.
The center says 6 other schools across the city will be receiving these kits, and the hope is more students will learn more about the nature that surrounds them. For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
At least one person died after a tornado ripped through parts of New Orleans on Tuesday night. The devastating twister flipped cars, ripped roofs off of many homes, uprooted trees, and caused power outages affecting around 8,000 homes. Streets and yards were littered with wood, metal, and downed power lines. An overturned school bus ended up around 91 meters from where it had originally been parked. You know, it's amazing that more people were not killed. Incredible devastation in New Orleans. Well, here in our city, we experienced some strong winds today and temperatures well above seasonal, but the mercury, however, will be dropping with some moisture on the way. Complete weather details are on deck. As a dog owner, I have to say that today was the perfect day to take your dog for a walk to the park. You know, nice and warm with a little bit of wind. Just make sure it's a bigger dog, as that wind would have taken my little dog way out. Jeanette Roche is here now with a full look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, today was a great day for the dogs, but Thursday may be more for ducks?
Yeah, that's true. And I hope that your dog enjoyed it, Hal, because moisture is on the way. We actually are looking at a chance of flurries or snow tomorrow, 60% chance changing to 30% chance. High of 5 degrees only tomorrow. Mix of sun and cloud on Friday, 6 degrees the high. Up to 12 on Saturday. There's those double digits I was talking about earlier. 16 degrees the high on Sunday. Monday, 30% chance of flurries or rain. 9 is the high, and then up to 14 degrees the high on next Tuesday. So we are seeing temperatures a little bit all over the place, from double-digit teens down to single digits, and snow possibly. Average high for this time of year, 7. -5 is the average low. 22 is where we were at back in 1939. That was our highest on record. Lowest on record was -25 in 1965. 7:28 is when the sun rose this morning. Our sun set this evening, 7:48, giving us 12 hours and 20 minutes of daylight. Over on the west coast tomorrow, increasing a cloud in Victoria and Vancouver. High of 10 in Victoria, 11 the high in Vancouver, 4 degrees the high in Edmonton. Starting out sunny in the morning in Edmonton, but then looking at flurries later on in the day. Flurries also expected tomorrow in Calgary with a high of 6 degrees there as well. As we look to the rest of the prairies, Saskatoon seeing a chance of rain, 1 degree only there, 7 degrees the high in Regina, mix of sun and cloud. Winnipeg's high of 6 degrees, also with partly cloudy skies. Let's take a look further east and see how central Canada is shaping up. Looking like a lot of moisture in this region. Toronto going to be seeing fog patches, drizzle, showers, 11 degrees the high, 8 degrees the high in Ottawa with rain. Montreal seeing periods of snow and or rain, 8 degrees the high there. Seeing more moisture as well as we look to the Atlantic coast here. Fredericton's high 2 degrees, chance of flurries. Halifax 4 degrees the high, mix of sun and cloud. Partly cloudy skies also in Charlottetown, 1 degree the high, and 1 also in St. John's, Newfoundland. Looking at 80 km/h winds there and a chance of flurries as well. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
The Saskatchewan Mining Association says it is relieved that CP Rail is resuming normal operations. The railway agreed to settle its dispute with the Teamsters Canada Rail Conference Union through binding arbitration. The association says 1/3 of the world's potash comes from Saskatchewan, and it is important for spring seeding that the product be delivered to market. Officials with the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan say a rail disruption would have threatened the ability of farmers to take advantage of high prices for commodities like wheat. The CP Rail strike that took place earlier this week, although short, could have had major impacts affecting many areas, including supply chain. Now, Tori Campbell, Reeve for Lethbridge County, says with there being so much uncertainty right now, adding any more disruption to the supply chain could have been devastating.
I think just given the fact that we had such a challenging year last year, there's so little feed in the area. Anyone who has animals on feed, well, I shouldn't say anyone, but most people that have animals on feed, I think are reliant on those trains coming from the States, be it corn, dried distillers grains, other feed grains that are coming up on trains. I think that was obviously top of mind for, I think, a lot of people in the area. I know we reached out to federal ministers of agriculture, labor, and transportation, and tried to stress to them the importance of having those trains move into southern Alberta to bring that corn.
Campbell says he's very happy the issues have been resolved and hopes there won't be any reverberations because of the strike. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 142 points in the day to 21,932. The Dow was down 448 points to 34,358. The S&P 500 was down 55 points on the day to 4456. And the Nasdaq was down 186 points to 13,922. West Texas Intermediate oil was up $5.66 to $114.93 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 4 cents to $5.23 US. Gold was up 52 cents to $19.44.39 US an ounce. And silver was even at $25.12 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $13.34 per bushel. Barley's at $9.80. Canola's at $26.42. And corn is at $12.01 per bushel. Live cattle were unchanged at $139.43. Feeder cattle were down 23 cents to $156.10. And lean hogs were up $2.30 to $102.55. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at 79.61 US. Recapping one of our top stories, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada stands with the people of Ukraine as Europe confronts its biggest security threat since the Second World War. Speaking to European parliamentarians in Brussels, Trudeau says democracies face a new threat from Russian President Vladimir Putin. He also says economic frustrations are threatening the stability of the world and driving a deep uncertainty. Coming up, an exclusive one-on-one interview with Alberta Premier Jason Kenney. We discuss a number of hot-button issues that you won't want to miss. A big event is coming up April 9th in Red Deer. It's the UCP Leadership Review. Will Premier Jason Kenney remain on as leader of the party, or will Conservative members vote to go in another direction? Now, this is a critical time for the party considering a provincial election is coming up next year. We're pleased to be joined now by Alberta Premier Jason Kenney. Premier Kenney, welcome back to Bridge City News.
It's been too long, Hal. Great to be back. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Now, Premier Kenney, in the past, former Premiers Ed Stelmach and Alison Redford said they wanted around 77 support from members to continue on as Premier. But you've said, I'm good to go at 50 plus 1%. Why such a low percentage?
Well, what I've actually said, Hal, is that in a democracy, majority is 50% plus 1. But look, I'm happy to be accountable to our members, looking forward to the leadership review. I think that as I get around the province, the vast majority of grassroots Conservatives know that we have to stay united, keep our eye on the ball, which means delivering on our commitments to Albertans and being in fighting form to defeat the NDP at the next election. And I don't think our members want to go into a cycle of endless division. The PCs did that between 2005 and 2015, even during prosperous times. For Albertans, with a friendly government in Ottawa, we had a cycle of 4 PC leaders. We ended up with 2 Conservative parties. All of that handed the NDP a majority government in 2015. We can't afford to do that again. And I'm confident that I'll receive a endorsement. Now, obviously, there are some people that are angry about everything related to COVID, who are angry about the need to have public health measures to protect a catastrophe in our hospitals. Some people who are against vaccines, and they want to have their say, and they will. But I think the vast majority of mainstream Conservatives will want stability, continuity, and unity.
So what lessons do you think were really learned during the COVID-19 pandemic? How may you have handled things a little bit differently during the height of the pandemic?
Well, one thing, a key lesson is Alberta needs to increase our healthcare capacity, which is a painful lesson because we have a Cadillac system in terms of cost, but we're not getting the bang for the buck to justify it. We went into COVID with the lowest per capita number of intensive care hospital beds in Canada, with the most expensive healthcare system in the country per capita. That doesn't make sense. So we are investing even more money, nearly $2 billion additional in the baseline healthcare budget to increase by 50 the count of ICU beds. And we have to hold Alberta Health Services accountable for the failure to provide adequate space when we almost ran out of capacity in a couple of times during COVID. But with respect to COVID restrictions themselves, Hal, we can go back and kind of relitigate everything that happened. I'll tell you this, though. On the one hand, we had this huge polarization and a lot of division. On the one hand, you had people who said, let her rip, be like Florida or South Dakota. Well, they had a death rate that was 3 to 4 times higher than us. Others say we should have been in a hard lockdown for the better part of 2 years, like Rachel Notley, with schools, places of worship, businesses closed, with curfews, stay-at-home orders, cops on every street checking people's papers, which is what happened in parts of Australia, New Zealand, sometimes Quebec. I think neither of those extremes made sense. We tried to navigate a middle ground approach based on the best information available to us that would avoid large-scale deaths, prevent a catastrophe in the hospitals, and minimize the damaging effect of restrictions on people's mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial well-being. And I think Albertans rose to the challenge and did that quite well.
Now, sticking with the healthcare theme, Premier, Alberta's had a shortage of doctors for quite some time. My own family doctor left for Holland because he didn't appreciate the restrictions, both from the province and the Trudeau Liberals, that were implemented. He called it forced coercion to get the COVID-19 vaccine. He wasn't happy about it. So what's being done to bring in more doctors, especially for us right here in southwestern Alberta?
Yeah, thank you, Hal. First of all, there actually are more doctors working in the Alberta healthcare system now than ever before. Last year, there was a net addition of 33 physicians. It's true that some did leave, but some always leave. There's always a cycle, particularly when we're so dependent on immigrant doctors. And so we know that there's an acute problem in Lethbridge. You did have in the past 2 or 3 years, I think about 40 family physicians left, and a lot of that was kind of coincidental. There was no particular reason. Now, I think one of the challenges we have is this. A lot of the younger, newer medical graduates are less interested in making a lot of money, to be honest, and more interested in quality of life. And a lot of them want to live in the 2 big cities for more kind of amenities. Then we have very strong financial incentives to serve in the rural areas. We've just put forward $90 million additional dollars for the roughly 800 rural docs in rural communities. But Lethbridge is neither of those. Like Lethbridge doesn't have the same full spectrum amenities of a metropolitan city like Calgary, and it doesn't have the extra pay offered by Alberta Health in smaller communities. So that's something we've got to sort through now. Alberta Health Services is working closely with the Lethbridge community. I think they've interviewed something like, if I'm not mistaken, 18 doctors. They've made a bunch of offers, so it will be an addition. I do know in some areas there has been additional service. Lethbridge for a long time had only 1 cardiologist, now has 4. And so we just need to keep building on that, turning the momentum around. With respect to vaccines, look, 99.8% of the 10,000 doctors in Alberta are vaccinated. So I don't think that has been a widespread cause of doctors not practicing here.
There is a grassroots movement called Take Back Alberta. It's a group led by David Parker, who used to be on your campaign team, I believe, back in 2017. And he says he wants you out as leader. Is this just sour grapes? What do you feel really led to this point?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things, Hal. First of all, even at the height of his popularity, Ralph Klein would have 20% of the members voting to review him have a leadership election. So at any time, any leader is going to have some people in a political party who are disenchanted because of whatever. They didn't get the appointment, the job they wanted, or the funding, or there's always some of that. It's a natural part of a party, of a democracy. But what's different now is frankly COVID, and I think there are some people who were on the letter rip side of the debate who were very angry about any public health measures. I understand their frustration. I'm a freedom-loving Alberta conservative. It was painful for me as a leader to conclude at various times that we had to bring in certain measures to prevent a total catastrophe in our healthcare system. But Hal, my job is not to pander to one faction of my political party. When you're elected to a position like mine, you have an overarching and very serious responsibility to govern for the common good. And I'm the kind of conservative who believes that radical personal autonomy is not the only political value. I'm a pro-life Christian, and I believe that the sanctity of human life, for me at least, is a central value. That caring for the poor and the vulnerable is an essential Christian and I think Alberta value. And also as a government that has responsibility for the healthcare system, we could not responsibly allow ourselves to be in a situation where we would be pulling life support on people in intensive care, denying care to others, canceling almost all surgeries, and medevacing critical care patients to Toronto. We were within about 10 days of having to do all of that in September. So Hal, I guess I would say this. There are some people who are frustrated about all of that. I get it. There's also people, and I'll be blunt with you about this. There are people who are, in Alberta, we've always had a hard right on the margins. And even in Ralph Klein and Peter Lougheed's day, they would have 1 or 2 marginal right parties that would get 5 to 10% of the vote. The people who are perennially angry and they have a lot of reasons to be angry over COVID. And some of those are people that we would not let run for us. I screened out about 35 applicants to be Conservative candidates in the last election because of extremism. One of the guys running around at those meetings to which you referred, Mr. Beasley from Brooks, wrote on Facebook that Islam is a death cult and that the Mongols should have snuffed out the Muslims when they had the chance. So we have people with views like that who do not fit into, I'll be blunt with you, Hal, they do not fit into a mainstream Conservative party. And some of them are trying to use this leadership review to destabilize this mainstream party. But I'm not going to give in to that because if this becomes some kind of marginal, hard right party that tolerates intolerance of and hateful views of that nature, then it does not reflect Alberta views. It certainly doesn't reflect my values, and it would be completely unelectable. So yeah, I am going to defend this as a big tent mainstream party, and I will defend the necessity to have brought in COVID measures to prevent a total humanitarian catastrophe in our hospitals.
Now, Brian Jean, who recently won the by-election of Fort McMurray-Lac-La-Biche, is back in the fold, and he says he's really gunning for your job. Let me ask you something, Premier Kenney. How soon until you punt Brian Jean out of caucus?
Well, the way our caucus governs caucus conduct, and I think that we acknowledge that between now and the decision of the members in the leadership review vote, there's going to be some different views expressed about leadership and about the future of the party. And I hope people recognize just how accepting I have been of different views within our caucus and within our party. We've been, in fact, the single greatest criticism I get from our members is that I've been too tolerant of that we need to get our act together, be disciplined, united, and focused, and not allow for constant internal divisions and distractions. Now, having said that, we have this leadership review process, but once the members make the decision, I will accept it. If the members say they want to move on and choose a new leader, I will accept that immediately and enthusiastically. And I certainly expect that Mr. Jean and others who want a change of leadership would do the same if there's an endorsement of my leadership. So we'll let the members decide. And then beyond that, I will take an endorsement from the membership as my marching orders to ensure that we get our act together, that we stay united, that we're disciplined, and that we get ready for the next election and stop the sideshows internally. And I think our caucus is of one mind on that.
You know, I'm glad you brought up the United Front. Many would argue that the UCP is somewhat fractured right now. Premier Kenney, what will it really take to unite the United Conservative Party once again, leading up to next year's provincial election?
Well, I think the leadership review is a critical moment, obviously, where we either decide to stay united or to descend into a deep division that I don't think we'd ever get out of. If we were to go into a leadership election right now, with all of the passion and anger over COVID stuff, we would sink ourselves into a endless divisive debate about a pandemic, the worst of which we hope and believe is behind us. I think that would be incredibly devastating. You know how there is a small number of Albertans who don't believe COVID was real, who believe that there's some kind of conspiracy around the vaccines. These are not look, 90% of Albertans are fully vaccinated, 90% of mainstream Albertans. If we turn this party into some kind of a debate over the safety or efficacy of vaccines, 90% of Alberta adults are going to say, who are you folks? Like, what are you smoking? We can't go into that kind of, as I say, kind of marginal, hard right politics, which is radically outside the mainstream of Alberta Conservative values and perspectives. And I fear very much that that's where we could end up if we go into a leadership review at this sensitive time, or rather a leadership election at this sensitive time. So that's why my appeal is, look, I've been imperfect as a leader, and I ask people to compare me not to the almighty, but to the alternative. I ask people to look at our record. We got through 3 crises while implementing nearly 90% of our platform commitment, and now leading the country in economic growth, incredible diversification, a balanced budget, a stronger Alberta, standing up for parental responsibility in education, the School Choice Act, the Turn Off the Taps legislation, repealing the carbon tax, suing Trudeau on his No More Pipelines law, holding the referendum on equalization, bringing in direct democracy like recall and initiative. We're getting the job done. Let's not turn ourselves into the 10 years of division Conservatives went through before the election of the NDP.
So if you don't survive the leadership review, would you possibly resign and look into getting back into federal politics, perhaps pursue the leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada?
No, absolutely not. Look, I'm confident about the desire of our members to maintain unity and stability moving forward into this incredible Alberta economic recovery. I did my service in Ottawa. I have no desire to go back to that. And I wish all of the folks putting themselves forward as federal Conservative candidates all the best. We need them and that party united as well, given the new Liberal NDP federal coalition.
Have you officially thrown your support behind any of the CPC candidates yet?
No, obviously I've got my own fish to fry here, Hal, and I don't want to be distracted. I know a number of the folks there are good friends of mine. You know, Pierre Poilievre worked on my campaigns in Calgary when he was a young fellow. He worked in my office in Ottawa. I should say, Leslyn Lewis, I think I sold her Conservative membership and encouraged her to run for the federal Conservatives in 2015. And there's other good people coming in. So I wish them all well.
Now, Premier Kenney, you talked about Christianity earlier in our interview. Edmonton Pastor James Coates, Calgary Pastor Tim Stevens, and Calgary street preacher who's done a lot of good work for the homeless in Calgary, Arthur Pulowski, all spent time behind bars, were arrested. Premier Kenney, why would the province have Christian pastors arrested, even thrown in jail? Did you not think this would upset your base?
Well, law enforcement decisions are not made by politicians in our system, of course, Hal. We have a system of the rule of law. And let me just say this, Alberta was the only province in Canada that did not prohibit congregational worship through public health policy throughout the 2 years of COVID. And every church I go to and every place of worship, people are thanking me for Alberta having been the outlier amongst the 10 provinces in having kept places of worship open all through and having had the least stringent restrictions on places of worship. We have about 10,000 clergy in Alberta, and 10,000 of them did not get in any trouble with law enforcement. 10,000 of them and their communities, Christian and other, obviously made at least some good faith effort to keep their congregants safe from COVID-19. Unfortunately, there were 2 or 3 people who, for whatever reason, went out of their way to make an example of themselves, very publicly and flagrantly refused to cooperate with any of the public health measures, even physical distancing or mask wearing or anything. So those are decisions that they made, and how no pastor, no politician is above the law. You don't get a pass from compliance with the rule of law because you call yourself a pastor or a politician or anything. Now, in terms of, so as I say, 10,000 of the 10,000 clergy in this province didn't have a problem. You'd have to ask those 3 why they chose to conduct themselves in such a way that ultimately judges stepped in and issued specific injunctions on their cases after months of effort by enforcement agencies to seek some minimal cooperation. In the case of Mr. Pulowski, he is, I understand, in the remand center because of his detention for incitement, where he went to a group at Coots, who we now know, some of whom were heavily armed and have been charged. Those individuals have been charged with conspiracy to commit murder. He stood in front of that group and said, "This is our Alamo, and we should be effectively," he said, "we should be prepared to commit violence and die for our convictions." And so, calling yourself a pastor does not exclude you from the laws that prohibit that kind of incitement. So it's up to the courts, not me, not the politicians, but to our independent judiciary to assess the facts. He has every right to defend himself. He is presumed innocent unless he is proven guilty. He gets legal counsel, natural justice, and due process. But no one is exempt from the legal process in our country.
Now, the UCP killed off a bill the NDP says would have protected Alberta's eastern slopes from future coal mining. Now, you shot down NDP leader Rachel Notley's Eastern Slopes Protection Act, which could have banned the new coal mining in the Rockies. Premier Kenney, let me ask you straight up, will we see future coal mining in our beautiful Canadian Rockies?
Well, there is and has been coal mining in the Rockies since about 1870. And basically the Lethbridge economy, the Galt Museum was built around that industry. The NDP grew out of the coal mines on the eastern slope. So we've had coal mining in the Rockies as they do on the western side in British Columbia for well over 130 years. But we are maintaining the policy that prohibits coal mining in sensitive ecosystems along the eastern slopes that could have downstream effects, for example, in terms of water quality. And so where we are retaining the same policy Alberta's had since the mid-1970s. And so the bill that she introduced was completely redundant because we've already reinforced that the prohibition on exploration or mining in what are called Category 1 lands, which are sensitive areas along the eastern slopes. But no, we're not going to shut down Grand Cache or make that into a ghost town. That's along the eastern slopes. They've been responsibly developing those mines there for, well, since the 1930s, I think. So we can do responsible resource development that protects our environment and also allows for economic development, while recognizing that there are areas where that's safe to do and there are others where it's not safe to do it.
Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, thanks so much for joining us today from Edmonton.
Thanks for the great questions, Hal, as always. Look forward to getting back to your program sometime soon.
Are you an entrepreneur in need of some help seeing your business grow, or a tech company who would like to get off the ground? Well, our next guest is from an organization that supports the growth of innovation and technology-based businesses in southeastern Alberta. Tracy Stroud is the Regional Innovation Coordinator at Apex Southeast Alberta, and we welcome her to the show today. Tracy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Tracy, you have a lot of experience in helping entrepreneurs grow their businesses. Can you talk a little bit about the benefits that Apex Alberta brings to Southern Alberta business owners?
Absolutely. So Apex is actually a collaborative organization in Southeast Alberta. And so we work with our Community Futures EntreCorp office, Medicine Hat College, and Alberta Innovates to help companies along their entrepreneurship journey. And so we can provide supports from early as a potential company has an idea that they want to see to fruition and see if it is a viable business idea, all the way up to existing companies that are looking to scale and grow. And so we provide quite a wide range of supports for tech and knowledge-based entrepreneurs.
Okay, that sounds so interesting. And is it mostly for businesses based in southeastern Alberta, like you're in Medicine Hat, for example? Do you ever go beyond that?
Sometimes, but it is pretty rare. So we are actually one of 8 regional innovation networks across the province. And each RIN, as we call it for short, they exist to help tech and knowledge-based companies start up and scale. And so we work in collaboration with the other regional innovation networks. So if a company is from a different region, there will be a RIN assigned to that region, and we would connect them to the proper supports in that area.
Okay, awesome. Now, how important is innovation and development to the Alberta economy? What kind of impact does that have?
Absolutely. It's so important right now in terms of diversification and providing new types of jobs. So right now, from a global perspective, IT jobs are the #1 hot job in the world. So with the pandemic, it's really increased the need for online businesses and providing a new way to reach new markets. So in terms of Alberta being able to diversify the economy into the tech and knowledge-based sector, it's very important. And we are seeing growth in this area. Recently, Alberta Innovates launched 4 new tech accelerators. And these are global tech accelerators, so the best of the best in coaching and helping more businesses scale up. And so we're getting more tech entrepreneurs, we're getting more companies to scale up and grow their business, which ultimately creates more jobs, which is really what we want to see in Alberta.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, your organization, Apex, does it look to promote Southeast Alberta as a destination for tech companies, or is your mission more to help develop ideas and technology already in the region, or both?
A little bit of both, actually. So primarily it is to help the entrepreneur get started and scale. But in some cases, we have existing companies that might need help with they're attracting the right type of workforce. So right now we have some companies that are needing additional support in STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and math. And so those positions are quite sought after in our region. And so we are creating awareness that those positions exist. We have local companies that are looking to fill them and letting them know about Southeast Alberta and the benefits of living in the area. So usually it's the entrepreneur development journey, but sometimes we do help companies in a different way when it comes to that workforce.
Mm-hmm. And the months of COVID, of course, restrictions, that took such a huge toll on so many small businesses and perhaps on the innovation and tech side of things as well. So are you seeing resilience among that business community? Like, what are some of the examples that you could give us?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially early on in the pandemic, we seen a lot of companies pivot to get their businesses online. And so we primarily work with more of those tech software companies. But during the early days of the pandemic, we were helping all companies to have an online presence so they could reach their customers in online markets. And so we've provided a lot of digital training supports, and we continue to do that. And so some of the training we're offering right now, our partner Community Futures has these digital squads in partnership with BusinessLink, and it's teaching companies not only to get online and get a website online, but how you can use Google AdWords and all of these other digital marketing supports that are needed. And so, yeah, we provide quite a wide array of training and supports, but the companies have been absolutely amazing to pivot and constantly adapt to the new world and the new regulations that we're seeing with COVID. So it's been great to see companies that have, done well during this time, this very difficult time. And some are even, thriving and doing better than before. So kudos again to our amazing business community.
Maybe talk a little bit about how our economy needs those small businesses and innovators to bring their ideas to market.
Absolutely. It's so important to have companies that are developing new intellectual property, that are developing new products and services that the world hasn't seen before. And there are companies doing it. And now it's a process of getting that to market. And so that's some of the supports that we provide is to help on those stages. And I would just say, companies don't need to do it alone. There are supports available, and it can be a tough journey on their own. And so why not engage with organizations that want to provide assistance and help make that journey a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. Now, where does the funding for Apex Alberta come from?
Primarily, it comes from Alberta Innovates. They support the regional innovation networks across Alberta. We also work with other partners to leverage resources, though, as well. So we try to make those dollars go as far as possible to provide supports for companies.
Yeah, and so I know you have a collaboration with Medicine Hat College. And how important are these collaborations that Apex has with other organizations in Medicine Hat?
Yeah, it absolutely is critical. So the regional innovation networks, they are an ecosystem of innovation supports. So if we are not offering a certain program at the time, we work with our other partners across Southeast Alberta to provide that, and sometimes even with the other innovation networks across the province. So we have some great advanced manufacturing capabilities in central Alberta. So that the RIN there is called Karen. And so we will work with those organizations to provide more of those specialized supports. Even from an export perspective, we don't have an expert office here in Southeast Alberta, but we will work with Calgary because they do, and to bring in those supports to provide it for the entrepreneur. So even though we like to let entrepreneurs know that you don't have to leave your community to get supports. We can bring supports into them, whatever they are needing. So companies don't have to go to bigger centers, especially tech companies. There's this perception that they might have to go to Silicon Valley to get supports. That is not the case. We can help them right here in Alberta.
That's really cool. So what kind of support or training does Apex provide?
Quite a variety. So right now we have 5 females working in partnership with our Medicine Hat College, going through a venture development training course. So these are women that have that are in tech or in science, and they have a really good idea that they want to see to come to fruition. And so the training has allowed them to go through the process of starting up that business and what it would take to be successful. So that's one example on the start level. On the scale level, we actually have some of our entrepreneurs right now in a lean sales accelerator. And so they're learning how to market their product and service to the next level. So depending on the needs of local companies is really how we adapt and provide that training. So I wouldn't say there's one training running all the time that's the same. We adapt to the needs of our business community.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. So how about, are there any innovators to watch? Maybe some trailblazers for us to watch out for in the coming months and year?
Absolutely. We've got some companies doing amazing things. I encourage people to check out our website, apexalberta.ca. We've got a company called Kinetisense right now that is actually exporting their software to 12 different countries. And some up and coming ones as well that you'll see on the website. Welltrax is another one creating software for oil and gas reclamation. Yeah, lots of exciting things happening that you can find out more on our website.
Tracy, thanks so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity as well. It's been great.
Tracy Stroud is the Regional Innovation Coordinator at Apex Southeast Alberta. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.